Amplifying Leadership, a podcast and place where we discuss leadership stories, challenges, and our wins. My name is Tara Lehman, and I'm a partner, coach, and consultant at Twin Life Coaching and Business Services. For our leadership clients, I do aim to provide effective leadership coaching, consulting, and those workshops to help develop you, your team, and of course, to also help improve your bottom line. You can see all the details in our current programs at amplifyingleadership.ca, a division of Twin Life Coaching and Business Services. Today, I am welcoming Jincy George, a talent development consultant and founder of Red Rabbit Learning Services, Inc. Welcome, Jincy.
Thank you, Tara.
So, as with my previous guests, I do want to ask you about where the name of your company came from. It's a very interesting name, Red Rabbit. Where did that come from?
Thank you. I've had a lot of curiosity around the name of my organization.
Sure.
So I launched my organization in 2021. It's called Red Rabbit Learning Services, Inc. Red Rabbit is actually, my Chinese ear is that of a rabbit.
Okay.
And, a rabbit, is known to be one of the luckiest signs of the Chinese, ear. However, a rabbit is known to be docile, very conflict averse, runs away at the first sign of, conflict or anything hard. And when I was starting my business, there were a lot of naysayers, in certain areas of my life. I've been very fortunate that I had a lot of people backing me up and telling me to go get it and do it. And
That's awesome.
But I also had a few naysayers around, and I was actually getting to a point where I was internalizing, some of those messages around this won't work. Why would you leave a very good job and go start your own business? This is such a bad idea. How many training organizations are already out there? You think you can do better? I heard a lot of this, and I was starting to internalize it. And so I, was thinking, oh, maybe this is me being scared of the risk and running away. And then I was kind of, on Google, as we all do, going down some going down some rabbit hole about Chinese rabbits. And then I came across this myth, this painting of the red rabbit. And the painting of the red rabbit, the painter was speaking about the red rabbit is different from your usual, the white, brown rabbits. The red rabbit is the fiercer rabbit. The red rabbit looks in the eye of danger. The red rabbit stands at its ground. And the red rabbit does not relent and persists in the face of negativity. And I was like, yep, you know what? I'm not the rabbit anymore. I want to be the red rabbit. So
I love it.
I decided to call it the Red Rabbit. And, I'm happy today. 2 years ago, I wouldn't have imagined where I could have gone. And today I'm in such a good place. So yeah, that's the story behind Red Rabbit.
I love it. It's an amazing story. And there's a really good background for it, right? So that's awesome. So you told us a little bit about your journey and a little bit about your limiting beliefs. So is there anything else that you want to share about your leadership journey?
So I started 16 years ago in HR, and I, serendipitously fell into learning and development 16 years ago. And, I've had the privilege of working with different industries. I started in an IT outsourcing organization, and I was training in India. I moved on to China. I worked in China, training and managing a team. And from China, I, moved to Canada, and then I got the opportunity to work a lot with the United States of America, a lot of organizations in the US, and a lot of leaders in the US. And then in Canada, I worked in healthcare, I worked in consulting, and then 2021, I decided to start my own organization. And under the banner of Red Rabbit Learning Services, I have worked with healthcare, developmental services, mechanical engineering, aeronautical engineering. I've worked with retail, manufacturing. So, I've had the privilege of working with a lot of industries and leaders in a lot of industries now.
Sounds like it. And it sounds like you're a world traveler too when it comes to work. That's amazing.
A
Love
little
it.
bit, not much.
Yeah. So I know you do a lot of training and even coaching. What
Mhm.
about that is really passionate for you? What really gets you going in the morning?
Ah, um, I think when I became a new leader, and that's
Hmm.
where this passion comes from. When I became a new leader, I actually think that I fared very poorly as a new leader.
Interesting.
And my passion for training today comes from I want to be able to support leaders to not make the mistakes I made when I was a new
Hmm.
leader. Um, and my biggest passion lies in actually supporting new leaders. I work
Oh,
with
that's
middle
great.
management, I work with senior leaders, I coach senior leaders and middle management, but I also, run cohorts of first-time leaders, and that's actually where my passion lies. Is I reading, learning, researching around, how new leaders can step into a new leadership role, step into their power, and take control. I think when I was a new leader, I really did not know how to do it. And one of the things that happened when I was a new leader was I was made a new leader because I was a great individual contributor. So,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
this is what a lot of organizations end up doing is that we zero in on a great individual contributor, and then we
Mhm.
think because he or she is very good at their job, let's make them a leader. I'm not saying that's problematic. We definitely want to select our high potentials and then push them into a
Yes, yeah.
leadership pathway. However, we also want to be able to support them to become the strong leaders that we envision them to be. And I feel that the organizations have a role to play in supporting a new leader to take on the role, but the new leader also has a lot of things to think
Hmm.
about and ensure that they win once they get into that role. And I think when I was a new leader, I really did not know how to support myself. And so
Hmm.
it's become a passion for me to help new leaders, to make sure they feel supported, to make sure they win and they feel successful in their leadership roles.
I love it. I'm one of those people who used to advocate for succession planning so that people have time, like 3 years, 5 years, to succession plan someone that they know is a star into those leadership roles and provide them all the training or support or anything else it might be. I mean, 100% agree with you that new leaders absolutely need that support and they need the time to get there.
They do, they do. But
Yeah.
the biggest irony is that new leaders don't have time. New leaders come in and they are drinking from a fire hose.
Oh,
My
for sure.
mentor, I've had the privilege of being mentored by a lot of good people, but David McLean has been one of my mentors. I met him when I started my job at London Health Sciences Center, and he says, you're drinking from a fire hose. This is your,
Hmm.
and then that is so true. New leaders are drinking from a fire hose and they don't have time. Most
Hmm.
often, when a new leader, especially if you're coming from outside an organization, when you
Oh, for
come
sure.
in, you are probably the role that you're coming in for has probably been vacant for a long time given the labor market. They
I
probably did
agree.
not find anybody for a long time. And so you're coming into a role that's been vacant. So it's like you're the rain in the parched land. So you're coming in and
Yeah.
your inbox is already full with a lot of high stakes decisions that you need to be now making. Because if they were easy decisions, your team would have already made those for you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. So you're coming in, you have a lot of high stakes decisions waiting for you. You are also experiencing a huge cognitive overload because
Oh, yes.
imagine coming from outside into an
Oh, yeah.
organization, right from figuring out where the toilet is to
That's a good
figuring
point.
out
Yeah.
right to figuring out what communications what instant messaging do you guys use, or what do you do with emails, or what folders do you store stuff in. You are just you know there's so much cognitive overload
Oh,
happening
for
and
sure.
there is no time. Because I remember when I had joined in as a new leader, my calendar was already pre-booked for me,
Oh,
right? My
wow.
calendar was already loaded for me, so
Yeah.
I was like running with my hair caught on fire, from one meeting to another, really not having enough time to digest what I got in that first
Hmm.
meeting. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of new leaders are in that place. We want to give them time, the irony is they have no time and they are drinking from a fire hose.
Yes, I would 100% agree. And, I'm wondering what maybe you would think that a new leader should maybe focus on, say, the first 60 to 90 days where they can help to overcome these types of problems, or they can learn more about their team or their organization in a way where they don't feel so much like a fire hose is being thrown at them. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. So um, I will talk through about three things that
Sure.
this is a podcast, not a training session, so I'll have to learn
Yeah.
to reel myself in. But I'll talk about three things. See, when you are a new leader, um, I talk about leveraging the honeymoon phase.
Mm.
This is not my phrase. I borrowed it from Pam Foxroll, and she is a, author of a book called 42. Um, I may be quoting this wrong, but I think it's called 42 Principles for New Leaders or something like
Oh,
that.
okay.
42 Rules for New Leaders. I'm probably doing it no justice,
But
but
42 is the number.
42 is the
42 is the
number, and I'll
number.
probably find it, send it to you, Tara. And she talks about leveraging the honeymoon phase. Now, this honeymoon's a little different, and I don't want to overuse the phrase here, but this honeymoon's a little different, right? Because you are, like I said, drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot happening. But why I call this, or why I really liked Pam calling it the honeymoon, is because you do have some of those biases playing in your favor because you are the new person, and people
Mm,
are giving you a little bit of a leeway right now as you come in as a new leader.
yeah, makes
So
sense.
you do have 60 to 90 days. You will only have that honeymoon phase for 90 days, maybe 120 days, but not beyond that. Beyond that, you become one of their own, right? So once you
Yeah,
come in, you have to leverage that phase of people giving you that leeway of being the new person in the organization.
yeah,
And one I think a biggest challenge for new leaders is we come in expecting the organization to onboard us. And I tell
yes,
my new leaders, I tell the new leaders that I meet that onboarding into an organization is not just the organization's responsibility. It is your responsibility to
yep,
onboard yourself. So
absolutely.
to think about what does onboarding myself look like, I say that the first and most important thing is to start building critical strategic relationships in the organization. I tell new leaders to not eat alone.
Oh,
Not
I
eat
love it.
alone. So every lunch, you should be sitting down with someone who is a strategic person in the organization. You should be reaching out to your peers saying, hey, can we have lunch today? You
Hmm.
should be meeting a team member, sitting down with a team member. This is the time that, when we talk about I have no time, you do have, you have to strategically kind of pull the time out, lunchtime or
Hmm.
having tea or coffee. You have to find the right people and start hanging out, talking to them. Upstream and downstream relationship building
Oh,
is very,
absolutely.
very critical in that
Absolutely.
honeymoon honeymoon phase that you are
Yes.
in. So that's one thing. So when I say onboard yourself, you have to be responsible as a new leader to be building those critical relationships. The other thing that I tell a lot of new leaders is start knowledge gathering. Your
Mhm.
team will look up to you and trust you only when they feel like you are competent to have
Yes.
stepped into that role. I talk about the warriors and the warriors in your team. We have
Hmm.
both of them when we come in as a new leader. We have warriors who are up against you in arms, and
Yeah.
they're like, why should we be doing this? Or why would you tell us to do that? Or what do you mean we have to now change what we were doing for the last 4 years, right? And they're
Hmm.
against every decision you bring down the pipeline. And then you have the warriors. The warriors are worried that you will come in and you will be one of those leaders who will clean house, shift,
Yeah.
things around.
Cultures. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and I have, I once worked with a leader who, when she came in, she was told that the team has a lot of, cliques within the
Yep.
team, and
Hmm.
there were people hanging out and gossiping. And then she, as a new leader, she thought that, oh, if people are, becoming cliques and they're sitting together and gossiping, I should change the way they all sit. So she came in on a weekend and she shifted everybody's seating arrangement. And the thing is, that kind of a that was a nail in her coffin as a new leader, because you
Yeah,
immediately lose trust. You immediately lose followership as a new leader, because some of the new leaders, one of the things they do is they move too fast.
that is kind of a nail in the coffin because, everybody wants to be able to be comfortable where they are at least for the first 90 days that somebody's there before there's any major changes. And it almost feels like school where they would move people around to get rid of the clicks or, stuff like
Yeah.
that. But, you eventually could, do a reorganization of the area or something. But you're right, maybe not in the first 90 days. Yeah.
No, that is why I said the second thing that I want new leaders to focus on is knowledge gathering and not immediate action.
Mhm.
Right? Michael Watkins calls it, he says, get small wins under your belt, not big wins.
Yeah.
Moving
Yeah.
things around too fast, too soon, they are big things, and you don't want to be jumping and doing big things. Get your small wins under your belt, gather knowledge as a new leader, get to know your team, understand, what are the hot buttons of the people who are in your team, how do they like to work. Some of them need micromanagement, and I am not a big I actually do not endorse micromanagement at all, but I'm saying some of them require you to be very, very involved with them,
Hmm.
and they need you to be involved as a leader. But some of them do not want you to be involved. Just tell me what to do and leave me alone. And
Hmm.
for you as a new leader, for you to understand how your team functions, you need those first few months to kind of soak in and understand. So I always tell them, don't move into quick actions. Take it slow, but you're also not sitting on the ledge of caution and being inactive. You
Hmm.
are, in fact, very active, but you're active in the sense of gathering knowledge and information. So I tell new leaders, more quiet time as you are in
Yes.
meetings, as you are in team, one-on-ones, because you're soaking in information.
I am a huge advocate for active listening. It's one of the big things I talk about with communication because, as that famous quote is, you have two ears and one mouth so that you can listen more than you speak. I mean, that's one of my favorites. And, when it comes to another point that you made, which is talking to all levels of the organization, is something I push hard because everybody has different ideas, different concerns or challenges. And if we only listen to our level of the organization, we're missing out on huge, huge feedback that we need in order for organizations and teams to grow.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
so important to make all those connections. And one thing I tell people is, if you're walking down to go to that bathroom and you see somebody you don't know, like an employee you've never met before, don't put your head down. If anything, smile and say hi, just to make them feel included and welcome. And that makes you also become more aware of who's around you as a new leader. So
Yeah.
love all those points.
Yeah.
So now I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of new leaders are coming into our new world. And our new world could be remote teams, it could be hybrid teams, it could be all in-house teams. So let's talk about like the hybrid and the remote because that is something that is huge right now. And I know people are coming back, but hybrid seems to be a go-to. So how can new leaders get to maybe know those other people on their teams if they are remote or hybrid? What are your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. The minute you said that, it reminds me of one of my ex-bosses and how much he hated the term the new normal.
Oh,
The new and it isn't the new normal. My husband's been working from home for the last 12 years, right? He's
oh,
been in
wow.
in a hybrid work environment for the last 12 years. So yes, the pandemic accelerated it. And
Mhm.
the good thing about the pandemic is a lot of organizations realized that you don't need everybody to be at work to be
Mhm.
working, right? You can work from remote places. So, leading hybrid teams is one of the training programs that I constantly am asked to do. A lot of clients reach out and say, can you do some work on leading hybrid teams? So, again, it is definitely an area that I talk a lot about, and I work a lot around. So, I will pick a few things when it comes to leading hybrid team. The biggest thing that is at stake when it comes to leading hybrid team, especially with leaders, is connection.
Oh, yes.
right? We have the ability to connect with people who are at work because we see them, like you said, on the way to the bathroom or
Yes.
at the water cooler, or you are
Lunchroom. Yeah.
at the microwave. Right. Yeah, you do see the people. And what can happen with a lot of leaders who work, have a hybrid team, is that you experience something called the proximity bias, which is
Mm-hmm.
you start being biased to people who are
Yes.
around you.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of research that shows that the best projects get given to the ones who are in the office.
Because you
Is the
see
ones
them.
who are in,
Yeah.
yeah, because
Yeah.
it's proximity, right?
Yeah.
The ones in the office are the ones who get the first sneak peek into critical decision making.
Mm-hmm.
They are the ones who are called in for quick meetings. Hey, can we have a quick hurdle? That quick,
Yep.
not hurdle, sorry, huddle.
Huddle.
The
Yep.
quick
No, it's all good.
huddle the quick huddle happens with the ones in the office.
Agree. Yeah.
Right. So connection is the biggest thing that is at stake, I feel, when you have a hybrid team. So the leaders who have hybrid team, they have to be very, very conscientious of how am I connecting with those who are not here with me in the
Mm-hmm.
office.
Yeah.
So I suggest, every meeting that you have as a leader, those meetings have to happen on an online platform like a Zoom or whatever you use. So everybody is included in that meeting,
Mm-hmm.
both the
Yeah.
people around you and the people who are, in remote locations. Everybody should be together. And when people are in remote locations, connect and connect often,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because it is that we talk about out of mind, out of sight, out of mind, and
Yes.
that happens so often, so often with leaders. Now, Tara, it is either out of sight, out of mind, or what I have seen a lot, and I coach a lot of leaders against this behavior, which is the minute you are out of sight, now I want to check in with you 3,000 times in a day because I don't trust you to do
Yes. Yeah. They just the constant check-ins.
the constant check-ins. I mean, I ended up hating the ringtone or whatever it's called, the notification tone of the Teams,
Oh,
Microsoft
yes.
Teams,
Yeah.
during the pandemic, because oh my God, like the follow-up and the Teams calls, right, like started getting to me so much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that it comes across as a lack of trust.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I tell leaders, you give somebody a critical project to do, and if you in the back of your mind you're like, oh my God, this is critical, I really need to know where it is. Don't be a tiger in the bushes and keep jumping up at people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this happens a whole lot on teams as well. Human beings do not react well to uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we
Absolutely.
know that our brains are triggered by uncertainty.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I always tell, my leaders is human beings prefer the certainty of misery over the misery of uncertainty.
Oh, I do like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tell me I'm going to be in pain, but don't, spring pain at me. And
Mm-hmm.
the team calls that come often and to check in because you're doing something critical, that is uncertainty, and it triggers people. It sends them
Mm-hmm.
into that fight flight freeze syndrome very, very quickly. So I tell leaders, if you are giving something and it is time critical and it is a high stakes project, build in the time for check-ins as soon as you're giving that in.
Exactly.
That
Like
should
schedule it.
happen. Schedule it. And you know
Yeah.
what? The people who are in your proximity who don't work remotely, they should also not be penalized because they work next door to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like you would drop in and keep knocking at their doors and going, hey, where are you with that? No, schedule the
Mm-hmm.
check in.
Yeah.
Make it certain that Jincy is going to check in with me every 2 days at 10 a.m. And I know it and I'm prepared for that check-in.
Yeah.
Schedule it. Right. And that's one thing that I tell leaders when you have a hybrid team, it's the extremes that are problematic. One, which is I don't see you, so I don't connect with you, or I do too much and I get in the way of you delivering. And I also send you a subliminal message that I don't trust you.
Yes. Yeah. I
Right.
I agree. Yeah.
Hmm. And the other thing that I find people struggling with when they are actually leading hybrid teams is that they do not front load expectations. and I talk about front loading expectations in a lot of my work as well. Front loading expectations looks like when I take my child to the supermarket, and I can tell you I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. When I take my 5-year-old to the supermarket with me, I tell my 5-year-old right as we get in, I say, you can go to the toy aisle and hold a toy
Uh-huh.
while we are in the market picking things up, while we are in the store picking things up. But when we are leaving the store, we're going to leave the toy behind.
That's
Is that
awesome
okay with
idea.
you? Right? And my 5-year-old goes, I have to leave it behind. And I'm like, yes, baby, we are not buying the toy. You can hold it till we are here. And knowing my shopping sprints, you were going to be there for an hour, hour and a half. So I'm like, hold the toy, but we are not taking it home. That's front loading expectation. So when I get to the checkout, my child's not throwing a fit because he couldn't
Mhm.
take the toy home.
Yeah.
My child knows that was the expectation that we're going to leave it behind. So he leaves it behind. And I'm not dealing with a crying, flaying child at the checkout.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
can tell you with my first child, I did not know anything about front loading expectations.
I wish I knew. I wish I had thought about that when my child was young.
And I had a lot of times at the checkout with a lot of people staring at me for bad parenting. So that is what it looks like even in leadership. Front load expectations if people are sitting in a remote location and working with you. Tell them when you give them a project what your expectations are. What are the expectations around meetings? What are the expectations around cameras being switched on during meetings? That's such
Yes.
a big topic. And
Yep.
I work with one organization that tells me, oh, we are totally okay with people having no cameras on and we want to give them their privacy. And I work with another organization and they will be like, can you please tell them to switch their cameras on? We want them on camera, right? So I have worked with both extremes. But what are your expectations around these things? Front load them. Don't expect them to read your mind and know that this is your expectation. And
Yeah.
that would mean spending time with your people, right? Like you
It's
can't
again
front
the
load
connection.
expectations. Connection, spend time, connect. And, even weave that connection in, weave those coffee meetings in. I know a lot of organizations that do coffee chats on a Thursday. And
Hmm.
that's, I feel like a great way to do the connections. But now we are post pandemic, if you're in the same city, call the person and say, hey, do you want to go grab lunch? Do you want to get
Yes.
coffee with me? And do that kind of a connection as well, so you're not always on a virtual platform.
One thing that I started back in, oh my goodness, 2000 or 2001 in my corporate life is we had salespeople across Canada. There was only, I think, 5 or 6 of them. But
Hmm.
the person in BC feels so remote because the next closest person, say in Manitoba somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I started, and back then it was phone calls until it turns into the video. I started just a weekly Friday meeting where everybody got on a call, including people from the office that were key to sales. So maybe a customer service and marketing, myself and our president at the time, and until I was running Canada. We just would all get on, and it makes that connection for them, so they know that we're here for them, and that we want, and that they can hear what's going on with us. Because if we had a major safety project going on, we want their feedback, and maybe it affects them in whatever way. They need to know what's going on. So I love that connection, making sure, even way back then, that we were making some sort of connection with those employees who are naturally remote and not just because of COVID, for example.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's wrap up our conversation today. What
Hmm.
would you say would be like the biggest tip you would give to our audience, the biggest leadership tip that you might have?
Oh my God, I struggle with this question so much because I
There's so many, I know.
There's so many. I think my biggest tip to my audience will be practicing humility as a leader.
Mm,
um, a leadership role is a responsibility, right? It's not a
absolutely.
title, it's a
Absolutely.
responsibility. Practice humility, and humility looks like asking your people what's the right next step because
Yes,
they know
feedback.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
know. Be the reasonable, rational, be that leader who understands that his or her team, their team has reasonable, rational individuals and asking for input. And, I do a lot of psychometric assessments, and we know
Hmm.
a lot of personalities when we do psychometric assessments are naturally they are type A personalities. They go too fast, they are driven, they
Hmm.
get results for the organization. That's all a good thing. But what happens when you are one of those results driven, get going, let's move it kind of a leader, is that you sometimes become so restless and overly dominating, and you can sometimes not wait around and get people's input, and you become
Yeah.
across as rash. And I tell leaders to take a pause, that pause, the powerful pause that is required in leadership, and then shift to humility. How can I, in this role of mine, understand that people who work with me are very, very capable? And how can I
Hmm.
pause, ask for their input? How do I practice humility as a leader? And I think with humility, a lot of things will come. With humility, I feel that the ability to listen comes, because you know
Yes,
that you are not the fountain of all wisdom and knowledge. People in your teams have so many things to share.
absolutely.
With right, with humility, the ability to learn about biases and inclusion and
Yes.
equity,
Yes.
that comes
Diversity.
with
Yes.
humility.
Yes.
Right. With humility comes the ability to understand that being accountable is not just the job of the person in your team, but also your role as a leader to teach people how to be accountable, to put the
Hmm.
guardrails for people to be accountable comes with leadership humility. So
Hmm.
I feel that leadership humility is key, and that'll be the biggest, that's the tip that I can give to leaders
Yeah.
who are
And
listening.
I love it because when I do my training about, feedback, it's not just about you providing feedback. It's about actually asking your employees, how am I doing as a leader? Or what do you guys think about this project? I 100% agree with you on that. It's so important. And it's like what we've been talking on and off today about that connection, about that networking with all levels and with your team. So absolutely. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Um, if somebody wanted to know more about you or your company, how would they reach you?
Oh, okay. I like that question.
Yes.
I liked all your questions. I like that question. I have a LinkedIn profile, and I think that's the best place to reach me. Send me a message, and I'm happy to connect. I stay pretty active on LinkedIn, I would think. And
Okay.
the other place is jincy.george at redrabbitlearning.ca. My name and redrabbitlearning.ca. I don't know if that's easy for people to remember, but LinkedIn is the best place, I think.
And her name is Jincy, Jincy George, and you can find her on LinkedIn. Thank you,
Thank you.
Jincy. Awesome conversation today.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Tara.
much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Tara. It's my pleasure. And this is my first podcast, so this will always remain special to me. Thank you, Tara.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you to Jincy and, of course, to our listeners. I hope you enjoyed the podcast today. If you are in need of some leadership coaching, consulting, or workshops, or even just want to be a guest on my podcast, please reach out to me at tara@twinlifecoaching.ca. To find out more about all our leadership services, please visit amplifyingleadership.ca, a Twin Life Coaching and Business Services division. Until next time, please be safe and be an amazing leader or leader to be.